World War I, often called the Great War, stands as one of the most transformative and devastating conflicts in human history. Beginning in 1914 and lasting until 1918, it reshaped nations, altered borders, and permanently changed the political and social landscape of the world. When historians discuss the causes of World War I, they often refer to a complex mix of political tensions, alliances, militarism, and nationalism that built up over decades. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in June 1914 is usually described as the spark that ignited the war, but the deeper causes ran far deeper and created a situation where a regional conflict quickly spiraled into a global catastrophe. Many nations were already engaged in an intense arms race, and the rise of military power became a central factor in the outbreak of the First World War. Countries such as Germany, France, Russia, and Britain were building massive armies and navies, each preparing for a potential future war that many feared was inevitable. This militarism combined with a complex network of alliances, such as the Triple Alliance Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy and the Triple Entente France, Russia, Britain ensured that any conflict between two nations would likely involve many others. Nationalism further fueled the flames, as various ethnic groups sought independence or dominance, particularly in the Balkans, which became a hotspot of political tension and violence. When the assassination of Franz Ferdinand occurred in Sarajevo, Austria-Hungary saw it as an opportunity to strike at Serbia, whom they blamed for supporting nationalist movements. Serbia, backed by Russia, refused to comply with Austria-Hungary's harsh ultimatum. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized its forces. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia, and soon after on France. Germany's invasion of Belgium brought Britain into the conflict, turning what should have been a limited confrontation into a full-scale European war. The United States, initially neutral, would eventually join the conflict in 1917, tipping the balance in favor of the Allies. This chain reaction of alliances and declarations revealed how deeply the world was entangled in political and military commitments, and how the causes of WW1 created the conditions for a total global war. Once the war began, the world witnessed some of the most brutal and destructive battles ever recorded in military history. The major battles of WW1, including the Battle of the Somme, the Battle of Verdun, the Battle of Gallipoli, and the Battle of Tannenberg, demonstrated the deadly power of modern industrial warfare. One of the defining features of the First World War was trench warfare, a grim and exhausting form of fighting where soldiers lived, fought, and died in muddy trenches stretching hundreds of miles across Europe. The Western Front became a stagnant line of trenches where neither side could achieve a decisive breakthrough. Machine guns, artillery, barbed wire, and poison gas turned the battlefield into a nightmare unlike anything experienced before. The Battle of Verdun in 1916 became one of the longest and bloodiest battles of the war, with French and German forces suffering massive losses. Verdun became a symbol of French resistance and determination, as the French army vowed that the enemy would not pass. The horror of Verdun demonstrated the futility of the strategies used during the war, as thousands of soldiers died for little or no territorial gain. The Battle of the Somme, fought the same year, became another tragic reminder of the immense human cost of World War I. On the first day alone, the British Army suffered more than 57,000 casualties, the worst day in its military history. The battle dragged on for months, with both sides suffering enormous losses and only minimal strategic gains. These battles illustrate how the major battles of World War I were shaped by outdated military tactics that could not keep up with the destructive capability of modern weapons. The war also saw the widespread use of new technologies such as tanks, aircraft, and chemical weapons. The introduction of tanks on the battlefield offered a glimpse of the mechanized warfare that would dominate later conflicts, while airplanes, initially used only for reconnaissance, gradually became instruments of aerial combat and bombing. Chemical warfare, particularly the use of chlorine and mustard gas, inflicted horrific injuries and added a new layer of terror to the battlefield. On the Eastern Front, the battles were more mobile, with vast armies maneuvering across large territories. The Battle of Tannenberg in 1914 was one of Germany's early victories against Russia, resulting in the destruction of an entire Russian army. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the Gallipoli campaign became one of the most significant Allied failures of the war. The British and Allied forces attempted to open a supply route to Russia by attacking the Ottoman Empire, but they met fierce resistance and suffered heavy losses, eventually being forced to retreat. The Gallipoli campaign became an important chapter in the national histories of Australia and New Zealand, whose troops fought bravely and suffered significant casualties. As the war dragged on, the economic and psychological strain on the nations involved became overwhelming. By 1917, Russia was suffering from internal unrest, food shortages, and political upheaval. The Russian Revolution forced the country to withdraw from the war, signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany. This allowed Germany to focus its forces on the Western Front, hoping to win the war before the United States could fully mobilize its military power. However, the entry of the United States into the war in April 1917 proved decisive. American troops, resources, and industrial strength greatly strengthened the Allies and helped them push back German forces during the final offensives of 1918. Exhausted, weakened, and facing internal collapse, Germany sought an armistice, which was signed on November 11, 1918, effectively ending the war. The aftermath of World War I reshaped the world's political landscape in dramatic ways. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, placed harsh penalties on Germany, including massive reparations, territorial losses, and strict military limitations. Many historians believe that the treaty's harsh terms helped create resentment and economic hardship in Germany, laying the groundwork for the rise of Adolf Hitler and the outbreak of World War II. The map of Europe was redrawn, with empires such as Austro-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Russia collapsing. New nations emerged, such as Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia, while others experienced dramatic political changes. The League of Nations, an international organization aimed at preventing future wars, was established but ultimately failed because it lacked real power and the United States never joined. The social impact of the war was equally profound, with millions of lives lost and entire generations affected. The devastation caused deep psychological scars, giving rise to literature, art, and cultural movements that reflected the disillusionment and trauma of the era. The First World War also accelerated social change, including movements for women's suffrage, technological advancements, and new political ideologies. In many ways, the legacy of World War I continues to influence the modern world. Its causes, major battles, and aftermath remain essential subjects in war history and continue to be explored by historians, researchers, and war documentary creators. Understanding the complex origins of the conflict, the enormous human cost of its battles, and the far-reaching consequences of its aftermath helps us better understand how global conflicts shape the course of history. For anyone seeking knowledge about WW1 history, the story of the Great War serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of nationalism, militarism, and political rivalry, and the importance of striving for peace in an increasingly interconnected world.